course, it started out scary. I think the biggest thing for me is I've had like a very, very good support system. Um, but I think the early years were a lot harder because I just didn't know. So it was
Mm-hmm.
like every time we had an appointment, I felt like they were saying something else. I'm like, look, y'all didn't tell me this
Mm-hmm.
last time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think her early years were a lot harder. Um, but the older she gets, I don't want to say it gets easier. I think I just find a way to adjust better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's one of those things like I gotta stay strong. If I'm worried, she's gonna worry, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and a lot of times I still freak her out. I'm like, what's happening? Let's go. Get your stuff. We gotta go to the doctor. And she'd be like, Mama, I'm fine. So it's been difficult, but there has been a lot of joyous times because I've been allowed to like see God work, you know,
Right.
Amen. Amen.
in ways that I probably would have never seen had I,
Mm-hmm.
birthed this little miracle baby. So
Amen.
there has been a lot of difficult a lot of hospital stays,
Mm-hmm.
um, a lot of blaming myself somewhere in there,
Mm.
Um, but I think for the most part, I've learned a lot from it, and I'm, still learning. It's not over, so
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of joy in there too.
And the doctors
If you,
like to scare you too
Yeah.
much. They like to
yes,
freak you
they
out
do.
when it's not
Hmm.
necessarily the truth. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that you were able to keep your child and see that God can do anything. And I mean,
Absolutely.
she is beautiful. She's my little
Mm-hmm.
sister. I love that girl. She's my sister. So it's like you just see God doing what He do, and doctors
Oh
don't know
yeah.
everything. They don't know everything.
Hmm.
God knows. And like Tanya
Right.
says, she can be anything or whatever
Yeah.
she want to be. Whatever
Hmm.
she want to be. Long as you put your mind to it. My mom used to always say, long as you put your mind to it, you can do whatever you want to do in life.
And can't
Nothing should
nobody
stop.
stop you
That's
but
right.
you.
That's right. That's right. That's
So,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Shannon, if you don't mind, could you explain the surgery that she recently had?
Hmm. So it was called a bladder augmentation. But essentially, what they did was they went in and took part of her intestines
Hmm.
and attached it to her bladder to make her bladder larger. So
Okay.
before she had the surgery, I don't remember the exact numbers, but if I was to guess, I think she was only holding like her bladder was the size of it was still the size of like a 2 year old baby
Hmm.
trying to hold urine. So after the
Hmm.
surgery and the way that they
Mm-hmm.
enlarged it, now she holds 3 times more than the average adult,
Okay.
which can be a good or bad
Oh,
thing
okay.
because it can hold so much that she's fine. And 6 hours later, it's like, oh crap, I forgot to go to the bathroom because it wasn't bothering me. Um,
Right.
but to the surgery, yes. So they took part of her intestines, they enlarged her bladder. She was hospitalized for a week. It was a 6 hour surgery. And I think that back to the question about being a parent is finding benefit. I think that's the hardest part is sitting in the waiting room, trying to figure out
Right.
what y'all doing back there to my baby. How is she doing? Can somebody come tell me? Can I just look through a window?
Mm-hmm.
So it was a 6 hour surgery. They kept her in the hospital for a week. Um, she came home with drainage tubes in her belly and in her bladder.
Hmm.
Um, and she kept those for a week. And she also had staples that she kept for 2 weeks. So the way that they did the surgery is they ended up opening her as if she had a cesarean.
Oh,
So she has a
wow.
bikini cut.
Wow.
They were going to do it the vertical way,
Hmm.
um, just because he said he needed more space to go in and
Right.
do what he needed to do. But they came out of surgery and said we were able to do a bikini cut because by the time we put her on the table, she was so tiny that I can get in there and do what I needed to do. So yeah, it
Yeah.
was like a bikini cut, but the main reason for the surgery was because she was having a lot of bladder leakage, getting a lot of
Mm-hmm.
UTIs just because her bladder was so small and it was holding on to so much bacteria that kept
Mm.
refluxing into her kidneys, and she kept she had about 3 or 4 runs with sepsis, and so finally the doctor
Mm.
said, "Okay, so it's time." So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Miss
we
Dawn.
anticipated for like 3 years. So We finally said yes.
Miss Dunn, you said that you don't have a shunt. Um, how
Mm.
how how did they go past not having to give you one, or do you know?
I really don't know, but well, let me just explain because by my parents believing in God,
Mm-hmm.
they prayed about the situation, you know, and that what they was telling my parents was, I needed this shunt or else I was going to die in 3 days because they gave me 3 days to live.